So I didn't do a very good job of introducing the video. Dawn and I just kind of started talking and dived right in. Just a forewarning that this video contains some sensitive material, some hard to hear type of stuff, but I have felt so strongly from God that this is where He wants me to be. He wants me to be in the hard conversations. Sometimes it's not going to feel good to me or to maybe even you that's listening to it, but it's what's needed in the day that we live in and the society that we're living in. I don't think with the generation coming up that we can continue to shove things under the rug anymore. We have to come out with our truth and our honesty and things that matter to us, because if we don't, it impacts our children, it impacts the generations to come, and we just need to be better. So I'm opening my heart and I'm opening my life up to you guys, and I hope that some of you out there are encouraged by it and can receive strength from it. So thank you.
Well, I'm so glad I get to talk to you, even though I forced myself on you. Oh man. But so you and I have been friends. I was trying to count how long we've been friends, but I think we've been friends for over 17 years now.
Yeah.
And you were I was like a young teenager, just like sophomore in high school, and I had so many emotions and so many things, running through my body already, just being young and a girl. But then I had so much stuff that was unresolved in my mind that I hadn't worked through. And I was thinking, I was kind of like trying to write out like what I wanted to like go over like on my notes or whatever. And I was just kind of thinking about how when you're young, like it's so important to have mentors. And I don't think we talk about it enough. But like mentors that can act as like towers of strength for you. And I literally wish that every girl could have a mentor like I had in you. Like,
oh, thank you.
Truly, like
that's so crazy. Like to hear that, because I was just being a kid, I was just being, I don't know. I didn't feel like I was anything great or doing anything great. Just being, Amber and I were going through our own stuff at the same time, with our dad's sickness and stuff. So it's weird. Like you're one of a few people that have said like, I really looked up to you in this situation or that situation. I'm like, dang, I was just being a kid, and now I feel like crap. Did I do something? Like, did I do everything I should have done? Or you know what I mean?
I mean, you have to like, I guess you have, because I was like quite a bit younger than you. I've always liked like older people. I think that's just I was the only child for 10 years, so and then I feel like I've always been more mature, so I was always with these people that weren't even in school anymore, and I'm over here in high school, But I think for me, like, when I say that, I truly mean it, just because if it hadn't been for you, and how I feel like you were so just authentic and like very raw, like you didn't hide or like pull punches from me, you know what I mean? Like, and that means a lot, because a lot of people in a lot of friendships, as you get older, you have these friends where it's like, yeah, I can hang out with you, but I know that I can only like be this much of who I really am. But then you have this other, which is normally a smaller circle of people, and you can't really like you can, I guess you can be yourself. And I have a few of those people in my life, and I think everybody does, but or they should. But you showed me what the kind of friend is that I needed. And I think part of that is why I went so long, like as I was like growing and really becoming an adult, I guess. I went so long without friends because I didn't want to sacrifice like my authenticity, just to, you know, seem like I had a friend.
Yeah, well, and it's hard to have authentic relationships because they take work. And a lot of people just want the cute like TV friendships where you see where people are just together all the time. Like that just doesn't happen. That
Yeah.
takes work, and that being authentic and be able to like speak to someone, and speak your truth and be who you are 100% and all those things. Like that takes work. It isn't just something that happens. And so I think people see that and want it, but then when it comes down to actually putting in the work, they're like, oh, wait, this is too much of my time, or this is too much of me being real or raw, or putting my feelings out and maybe getting hurt and things of that sort. So then a lot of times you want it, but you don't really understand how much work it takes to have those kind of relationships.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like our friendships, like years ago, I think you always look back in retrospect and you're like comparing it to the here and now. It's just like nostalgic or whatever.
Yeah.
But those friendships, like sometimes I'm just like, will they ever be deep? You know what I mean? Like, but at the same time, it's like you're in a different season. You know what I mean? And you couldn't have those friendships if you wanted to in the season of life that you're in now.
No. Yeah. Our lives are totally different now than they were then.
Yeah, they are for sure. But I just kind of wanted to talk to you like leading into kind of what I wanted to talk about today. I just the reason why, even though it's been years since I've lived in Bakersfield and been around you, I feel like my friendship with you has just gotten more and more special. And it's because of how honest and how much you owned your truth about sexual abuse and sexual trauma. And back then I didn't understand just how impactful it would be to me now, today. But because I truly feel like because of your your bravery, then like you being the courageous person that you are, just to own what happened to you and to move forward and to heal, has helped me like not completely unravel. And I know it sounds kind of dramatic, but it is how I feel. And I say that because I went to a therapy session a couple of years ago, and it wasn't until that therapy session that I like realized that, hey, this thing that happened to me when I was really young wasn't my fault. For years I thought that it was something that I did, that it was my fault. And I wasn't really, something that the therapist said just kind of turned a light bulb on in my head. And I was like, oh, that wasn't me. That wasn't my fault. I didn't do that to myself. That was done to me. I was too young to, I was too young to know. And I don't know, I can't tell you why. I don't know if it was because I buried it, because I felt so much shame. But when I was younger, there were several boys that I was around growing up, and they sexually abused me. I mean, there were two of them. And I until then, I had been living with so much shame, and the shame like transpired into, getting married, and having a healthy marriage with my husband. I didn't understand. I mean, I understood that it was what was impacting it, but I didn't understand to the extent that it was impacting my marriage. Until that session with my counselor. But I just kind of wanted to like bring you in because there wasn't anyone else when I thought about talking through this whole ordeal that I wanted to talk to you more than you.
I think that I don't want to make it out like I've arrived or like I'm at my healing. I think I'm in the process of it. What I don't think that people quite understand is that I don't think you ever come to complete healing, but when there's different seasons in your life that show you where you are, I guess, in your healing. And for me, becoming a mother was like, whoa, I'm not through this at all. Like, I thought I was good. I was finally able to talk about it and not get upset. I was like, I'm cool. And then I had my kids, and it was a whole nother level of the trauma that I realized. My mama bear came out. I couldn't understand how someone could, one, do this to someone. I couldn't understand how the support that I felt like I needed at the time wasn't there. There were so many different levels that came up. And then I started noticing in my marriage, and that was a whole nother, level of trying to work through it. So there's always these steps, and I think that it's important that you realize those steps and that you try to work through those processes, and they're all different in their own way. But yes, I have nowhere arrived. There's times and seasons in my life where I'm like 100% on board working through it. I'm reading all the things, I'm talking to all the people, I'm doing all the things. And then there's other seasons of my life where I am now, where, my dad passed, and I'm more focused on that kind of grief area that I'm in. And so this is kind of placed a back burner. I'm not as focused on as I would be, but I definitely see it come up in my parenting and the way that I am with my children, my protectiveness, the way that they call me a smother, mother smother, I'm a smother, the way the way I helicopter parent kind of thing. So I definitely see it in my parenting, good and bad. In ways that, are protecting my children, in ways that I'm overprotecting my children. So yeah, there's different layers of it, and times that'll come up totally different, in your life. But for sure, I don't think anyone ever arrives.
Yeah.
I think you're constantly learning and healing, and you're just at a different process of healing,
Right. You say that, and it makes me think of, there's like this certain thing that in our marriage Roderick has always done. Like and this is I'm going to be completely just transparent in this video, and I mean in this talk with you, but he smacks my butt, like just a little love tap, that's his like part of his like love language, I guess.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how much like my entire body just kind of cringes when he does that. And it has to do with the trauma that I experienced.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And I can't, I don't, like, it doesn't matter how many self-help books I read. It doesn't matter how much I pray. And I'm like, God, please just take this thing away from me. Like, it doesn't matter how much I do any of that. To this day, it still just makes my entire body just, like go on edge. So you say like you don't ever like fully arrive in healing, like from something like so traumatic. Like I guess I could agree.
Yeah, it's just a different level. It's not healing. It's being able, now you're at a space where, and maybe you're not, but you can get to a space where you can say, okay, this makes me feel weird. This does something to my body. So I'm going to bring it up. When in past relationships or in the past in my marriage, I might have just let it go because he can't handle this, or he may get upset when I say this, or this is something that he likes or turns him on. So I'm not going to say anything. The next level of healing comes when you can say, hey, babe, that does something totally different to me than it does to you. And you be able to have that conversation and no one be offended and no one be in their feelings, and be able to be open and authentic and honest about how it makes you feel. That's the next, I think, I'm not a psychologist, but that's the next level of healing to me, is when now I can bring it to my partner. We can share in this, and whether or not it's something we decide, hey, we're not going to do in the future, just something we work through, but I'm at least there to where I can open up and speak about it and not just keep it in or just deal with it, because you were kind of allowing yourself to be the victim again. When it happens to you, you feel it and you don't speak up. You're once again telling yourself like, okay, I have to be quiet to protect this man. You know what I mean? In a way.
Right. Yeah.
So that's how I see it.
That makes sense. I feel like I'm still at the beginning stages of the whole journey, but I feel like it doesn't. There's this book by Dr. Rosanna Vicari, and I wanted to mention this because I read this little bitty excerpt and I was just like, wow, that's completely true. But it says, when you're experiencing all the dysfunction in adulthood, it's not because you're still traumatized by the physical event. That's part of it. It's really because you're traumatized by the silence that is present every day of your adult life. And that completely describes me to a T up until a couple of years ago. Like I hadn't had conversations with anyone besides my husband about this. And I didn't really honestly have a conversation with myself either, because I didn't wholly realize that, hey, you know, I was raped, you know, I was sexually abused, assaulted, you know, multiple times. I never told myself that. I never gave myself, you know, like permission to say my truth. And until I could do that, you know, that's what I was doing. I was, you know, being traumatized every single day by the silence that was, you know, covering my, you know, my mouth. Anyway.
Yeah. 100%. I think when we are able to say it out loud, when we're able to have a conversation with ourselves, it's freeing, even though it hurts and it doesn't feel good. It's freeing because it's not, again, saying to that child, be quiet, don't share, no one's going to hear you, no one's going to believe you, whatever the case may be. You're able to say, like, no, I'm saying it, it's out there. Even if it is to yourself. And I think it has to be to us first before anybody else. We have to admit that it happened. We have to admit that it's okay to say it happened. You know, I don't know if this is the same for you, but I have this word that comes up in my mind all the time, anytime I have to process any kind of trauma that's happened to me. And it's dramatic. It's you're being dramatic. It comes up all the time. And so anytime I have something where my initial thought is, don't say it, you're being dramatic, I make myself, like, even if it's just to me, I make myself say it out, because I am the furthest thing from a dramatic person. I hate confrontation. I hate drama. I don't like it. And so that's not true. That's something that's been spoke over me to keep me silent. That's something that has been spoke over a lot of women. In the upbringing that we were in, you know, to be quiet, to be settled, to not be loud, you know, and it was perceived as being dramatic. And so that's something that I hear a lot. And so I've really tried with my daughter to, and it's hard because she can be what I would perceive as dramatic. You know, she can make a big deal out of things that I don't,
really sassy.
Really sassy mini-me's. But the thing is, it's not my experience, it's hers. And so her experience may be that it's the end of the world when I brush her hair and it hurts, you know, but that doesn't mean she's dramatic. That means that's her experience of it. And so that again, another thing that comes up in parenting, like you're realizing that your traumas and the way that you were hushed maybe, or how you felt you were being hushed, you see that coming up in your parenting and things of that sort.
Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like people that haven't been around or haven't experienced this type of abuse, like, do you feel like sometimes you run into, you know, friends or people that you become close to and they just completely don't understand it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky in the way that I have had supportive. I haven't shared with a ton of people, but like the close people with to me that I've shared it with, they've been supported. I have had situations with maybe family members where it's not that they don't understand, it's more of like, okay, but that happened so long ago. Maybe that kind of narrative is that, okay, but you know, you were such and such age, now you're older, you have your own family, like just move on, kind of thing. And that's hard to hear because it affects my day to day. So it doesn't matter if it happened years ago. It affects who I am today. It affects every step that I make in my parenting, in my relationship with my husband, in my relationship with God, in my family relationships. It affects that. So yeah, I've heard that, I've experienced that from like some family members before, like just kind of get over it in a way, you know?
Yeah. I think part of what it also like made me apprehensive and maybe just want to like not even say anything was the idea that like the whole Me Too movement, like that I've heard so many people, I've even heard really, you know, close to me, family and friends just say, well, why wouldn't she say something, you know, 15 years ago? Like, why wouldn't she say something when it happened? Like,
yeah, it wasn't safe. because it wasn't safe.
Like
it wasn't.
Right. I mean, it's just like, have you ever had that happen to you? If you haven't, then I don't know that you can really speak from the perspective of why did it take her 15 years to say something?
Yeah. And that's the funny thing is I think people feel like they can say, like, why are you just now bringing it up or whatever. I think they do feel like they have that, whatever, they can say that. But I think what happens, and like with the whole Me Too thing, is that it makes you realize, wow, people are discussing this. This doesn't have to be so hush hush. I can talk about it. And it's not, it shows you that the world didn't come to an end. It didn't fall on top of me. Like, I said my truth and I'm still standing. I'm still here. So a lot of times, yes, you'll get where some people think, oh, they're just following a trend. Oh, they're just wanting to be one of those people, whatever. But on the other hand, it does make the victim, the person who's went through the trauma, feel like, okay, someone said it and nothing happened. Everything was okay. Like, they didn't die. Like, the world didn't fall apart. And so I know for me, like, hearing other people be able to share and tell their stories has really helped me feel more comfortable talking about it. Even though I was comfortable when I was younger, it was a very surface level way I would talk about it, and more flippant, more like, oh, it happened, and kind of move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Me Too movement kind of helped me, like, realize that there is people in my life that I can talk to and will be supportive and will understand me. And the ones that don't, I don't go to those people anymore. I don't get advice from those people. And frankly, if they feel like I shouldn't be talking about it, then that's on them, and they need to come to terms with that on their own. But yeah, unfortunately, I think with anything in your life, there's going to be people who have their opinions about it, good or bad,
Right. Yeah. How, as far as like your relationship with God, and like, I feel like for most of my life, like, God came into the picture, and that's what saved me. Like, that availability to like release my emotions somewhere, whereas prior to like coming to God and being involved in a church, I had nowhere for it to fall out of me. So I just kept building and building and building. But after I had that whole realization a couple of years ago, and I was working through that, it's almost like I got mad at him for a minute. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just being completely honest, like, did you ever have that feeling? How did you work through it?
I don't really remember a lot when I was younger as far as that. I do remember having, like, feeling upset that I wasn't protected, or why was I even in this situation for this to happen to me. But now that I'm older, looking back, my situation's a little bit different than yours, in where, and it may not be, but in where the man had issues with other people too. He did stuff with other people. So it was a reoccurring thing. So I didn't feel so much it was like God allowed this to happen. It was like, this person's sick and they just found a lot of victims, So I never really had that. I will say that the way it affected my relationship with God was the hushness about it, the quietness about it, the having to keep it to myself to protect others kind of thing, made it to where in my relationship with God, I keep things to myself. I have a hard time going to God when I need something. I pray for family constantly. I pray for friends. I'm a person who, you call me, I'm on my knees, I'm praying. Like, I have no problem reaching out to God for you. But when it comes to me, it's a lot different. It's a lot harder for me. And especially traumas, deep things that hurt me, it's really hard for me to open up to God. And I think that might have something to do with it. I think all the years of just trying to hide that, to keep it quiet, to outside people, that weren't close to me, to pretend like nothing was wrong, those sort of things. I think that damaged my relationship with God, because here's another person that maybe I can't fully give everything to and trust everything with him, and him still love me, and him still accept me, kind of thing,
Right. Do you think the church does enough today, just like the church in general? Like, I mean,
the big C church.
I mean, Christianity. But do you think that the churches of today, like, they do enough to like be there and to be aware of this, like the potential of this and like,
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's better than it's ever been. I think we're in a time where it's safer, more safe now than it's ever been. I don't think that that's been across the board, since when we were younger, especially my mom's generation, especially, you just didn't talk about it. And even if it happened in the church, and I think, and even if it was brought up to members of the church or officials or higher people in the church, it was been, told keep quiet, especially if the person was someone who was, high up in the church or whatever, being used or whatever. I do feel like now there's more conversation happening. I've even known of churches that have like groups where, people who have been sexually assaulted and stuff can go and share their truth and have, conversations with other people and, kind of like we're doing here today. So I do think it's getting there. Um, I haven't been in a situation to where I know it's going on, but I would wonder how a church would handle it if it was to happen and it be someone high up or it be someone who's highly used or it be, you know what I mean?
right.
Even though the conversations are happening, I'm wondering how much would be spoken about if it ended up being someone in power, I guess you could say,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because a lot of times you don't hear about it, right? Because
Yeah,
I mean, with child abuse, like you're still a child. You don't
yeah, yeah,
that journey for you doesn't start until you can process what
yeah,
happened to you.
yeah,
But yeah, I just am curious. I feel like there are so many things that I'm based on like what I have went through in the past, the things that I've have worked to overcome, the things that I've had to heal from. There are so many things that I feel so passionate about with like this next generation of young people coming up. Like, are we doing enough? As a Christian today, am I doing enough to be supportive of, the incoming generation?
yeah. I kind of think that sometimes it's easy for us to kind of push it off on others too. So as to say like the church needs to be more responsive or like school needs to be more responsive and things of that sort, which is 100% true. But also, I believe it starts in the home. And so,
Absolutely.
what the conversations that I'm having with my kids, both of them, Eldon and McKenna, at a young age, I'm talking about their bodies. I'm talking about what's appropriate, what's not. I'm talking about who's appropriate to see you undressed, who's not, things of that sort. Um, Even to the extent where they can tell me when they don't like something. McKenna has told me multiple times not to kiss her because she just doesn't like it. And she doesn't really have a good reason. Usually it's at school. She doesn't want me to kiss her goodbye because she's embarrassed because we're friends, whatever. And I am, like I said, I'm a smother. I love to be all over my kids 24/7. I'm snuggling. I'm all for that. And so I've had to really kind of eat my own words because I'm telling her your body is yours. And if you don't want someone touching you, you can tell them. But then she's like, Mom, I don't want a hug. And I'm like, what the heck? I want to hug. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't make sense. I'm your mom. But then being like, okay, that's she doesn't have to give me a reason. That's her body and she doesn't want me doing it. I'm not going to do it. And so I think it starts there. If it starts there, it's a conversation that you're having, it's books that you're reading, it's things that you're talking about. You're leaving family situations and saying, hey, do you feel comfortable around those people at so and so's home? Did you feel comfortable there? Did anyone make you feel weird? Things of that sort. And I may go to the extreme on that. And there's definitely things in my healing that I could probably tone down in that area. But honestly, I would rather be overboard and nothing happened than be underboard and something happened and my kids weren't aware. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or didn't feel comfortable coming to me and talking to me about it. And so I think it really does truly start there, even though the church has stuff they can do, school has stuff they can do. If you're in the home talking about it and really making sure that your kids know it's their body and they have a right to say no, they have a right to say stop, they have a right to say leave me alone to anyone, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, adult, child, anyone. If they feel that power, we are going to see less and less of this happening, I believe,
Yeah.
in this generation and the generations to come. That's
Yeah.
my opinion. I think a lot of the reasons why it happens so often is that one, there's people out there that are just going to do it because they have their own sicknesses and their own issues, but also family members were told to keep it quiet, and families were told, you know, the sickness stayed inside. And I think if our kids realize that it doesn't matter if my favorite uncle is the person who did it and he's the best friend of mommy and daddy, it doesn't matter. If
Yeah.
he's the person who messed you up, he's the person that he's not going to be around, and we're going to believe you and we're going to love you, and they have to feel safe and comfortable in that. You know what I mean? I think it
Absolutely.
starts there.
Absolutely. I love that. I agree completely.
Yeah.
That made me think of my uncle, a few years ago. He told me that my son was like telling him bye, and somehow the subject came up, like, you know, somebody explained to us, like, when children are telling you bye, don't make them hug someone. Like,
Yeah.
if they would rather give them a high five or a fist bump or whatever,
Yeah.
you let them do what's comfortable to them. And that's
Yeah.
something that I've tried to keep going. You know, if one of my kids acts shy when we're leaving them, because our family is very much so, like, when we leave, we're like, okay, give everybody a hug and say
Yeah.
bye.
Us
Like,
too. Yeah. Yeah.
like, so, like, I'm like, well, if you don't want to give a hug, just give a high five, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
bye.
It's hard because as a
It
parent,
is
we have
hard.
to stand up. We have to advocate for our children. And especially in the generation we were raised in our families, they're very huggy, very touchy-feely kind of families, very much I love you all the time, things of that sort. And so it's difficult to not want to please Aunt Sally or not want to make Uncle Harry happy, or you know what I mean? Because you
Yeah.
love them and you know that a little snuggle from your kid is going to make them so happy. But if McKenna doesn't want to hug you, she doesn't have to hug you. And it's not because she's a
Yeah.
brat. It's not because she has an attitude. It's because she knows her body and she doesn't want to give a hug. And so it's a weird place to be, especially for someone like me who, if I can avoid confrontation at all costs, I will do it. Okay, that's just who I am. But when it comes to my kids, it's different. I have to be different. I have to protect them in that way. And if they are saying they don't want to do something in that way now, if they're just being darn, you know, they don't want to pick up their clothes or whatever, that's different. You know, that doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. But if it's something where they're saying in their with their bodies that they don't want to hug, they don't want to kiss, they don't want to whatever, then you have to listen to that and be okay with another adult, someone you love, maybe being upset with you, maybe not quite understanding that you said, you know, they don't have to hug you, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
it's really weird.
I'm like that with my children, but like in general, I think part of my like exterior or like my walls going up is like I like feel uncomfortable by like affection, I guess. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always like, there, like
Yeah.
to people, like, let's not do that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and my husband like makes fun of me because I'm just so like, he's like, you are literally the most touch me not person I've ever met in my life. Like, and I'm like, I can't help it. And like,
Yeah.
I'm always like, God, can you please just like make me just a tad bit more affectionate, please? But the thing is like, I'm not affectionate, but I'm so empathetic. Like, I feel things so strongly. Like,
Yeah.
if I see somebody on the side of the road, I'm like, oh God, give him $5. I don't know. Like, you know,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like, whereas my husband's like, oh, he can go get a job, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, you have some noodles back there somewhere? Can you give him a pack of noodles? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah,
he's
the
like,
physical touch is a little different for you. Like the empathy
yeah,
is there, but the physical, yeah.
yeah, for sure. And that's hard to explain sometimes, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's hilarious. But I think that's why I'm even more prone to be like, well, my kid doesn't really like you. Like, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
make him hug you. So
Yeah.
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 But
It makes it a little bit more
really,
comfortable.
yeah, I really love that whole idea. It's like, well, if you don't feel comfortable hugging them, just give them a high five and fist bump.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
that's
love
a
that.
good,
I wish
that's a good
everybody
idea.
would do that because
Yeah.
that way your kid doesn't feel like, you know, they have to hug everybody.
Well,
You
it
know?
kind of sends a message of, even if I'm uncomfortable, if this person is an adult, I have to kind of let my uncomfortability kind of like just ignore my body telling me I'm uncomfortable, so that this adult is okay and not upset with me or whatever. And so then when it comes time for that person to sexually assault you, your mind is telling you, okay, well, this is an adult and they want this. And so it might be weird for me to say I don't want this, even though my body is saying I don't want this. So I'm just going to keep quiet. And you don't know it at the time when you're forcing your kid to hug Uncle Harry, that you're kind of subconsciously telling them that they can't tell an adult no, that they can't tell an adult, I don't want to physically touch you, you know? And so it is,
Right.
people don't see it on that level. I'm like, oh, you're just being dramatic. There's that word again. But No, that's not the case. The case is I'm subconsciously telling my kids that they don't know their own body and they can't listen to their own feelings. And so I'm
You
sorry.
know,
I'm.
yeah, you said like the people will be like, yeah, you're just dramatic. But as soon as you said that, like, I was like, there are going to be people that like watch this and listen to you and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's what she would be thinking, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
And I'm like, again, here we are back with that whole like, if you haven't been through it, if you
yep,
haven't been close to it, if you have
yep,
no idea the
yep.
thoughts that go on in your head,
24/7 constantly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
If you don't, if and God forbid you ever experience it. I
right,
I hope no one else in the entire world has to experience it. You don't know until you know. And so just like I wouldn't, my husband struggled with addiction for 6 years on and off. Struggled very deeply with it. I know nothing about that. I don't understand it at all. I'm not going to come to him and question when he has a dream about drugs and be like, what the heck? You know how much that destroyed our lives and no, I don't deal with that. I don't understand it. So it's not my place to try to pretend like I know his experience or how he's feeling about it. And it's the same thing with this. If you've never been there, someone might be dramatic in your mind, but I would rather, like I said, be over the top than something happen to my child and have the thought I wasn't there to protect them or I never told them what they could do to get themselves out of that situation.
right,
I would never want to live with that. And so I would rather be over the top than not protect them the way that I feel God has called me to be as their parent.
yeah. Because you know how much it's taken just to, you know what I mean, move on in your
Yeah, it's
life
a
every
lifetime.
single day.
It's a
You,
lifetime and it creates anxieties that I will have to deal with my entire life, even if I'm in healing. Even as I go through my healing, there are new anxieties and new things that pop up that daily I have to pray about, work through, handle that I could prevent my kids from going through simply by having a conversation, simply by showing them I protect them, I support them. I could prevent that lifetime of traumatic issues for them. Why wouldn't I want to do that?
absolutely love
Yeah.
it. So we only have like 3 more minutes left in our little Zoom. So I just wanted to ask you one last question. And if you could go back to your younger self and you could tell her something, anything, what would it be?
Ooh, I didn't
I
know we were gonna have
know.
therapy today. Um, honestly, I would probably say you can tell what happened and the world's not going to fall apart. When our my stuff was going on, there was a situation where we had a family member who was really sick, and I held on and allowed things to happen longer than I should have because I was trying to protect. I thought, like I said, the world would fall apart around me, the sky would fall, and things would just be over. And I wish I could tell her that there's going to be people who support you. It's going to be okay. And, you know, you don't have to keep it all in. You don't have to hide it because the hiding it is what's caused all of these issues, I believe. I always say our secrets keep us sick, and I know lots of people say that. I didn't coin that phrase, but it really does. What
Yeah,
you're holding in, and you're not speaking out. It does keep you sick, and I really believe a lot of my health issues to this day are because of that situation and other situations that I held in for so many years. And so now I have ulcers and stomach issues and things of that sort because I have held so much in to protect others, all the while killing myself, hurting myself. And so I would just say to her, there's going to be unsupport and there's going to be support. And it's going to happen now, or it's going to happen when you're 30, when you're 40. You're going to have supported people and you're going to have unsupported people. And so it's where you want to deal it with then and maybe catch it and be over it and through it before you bring children and you bring a relationship into it, or you handle it now when you have all these other people that are having to go through it with you. You know what I
yeah,
mean? I
yeah,
would just say be brave. I would just say, say say your truth and go to someone who's safe. Go to someone who you know who's safe, someone who's going to be there through it with you, not just be like, oh, you told me, okay, now bye. You know, someone who's going to walk with you and support you through it. Go to someone who you feel safe with.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. I think it's going to kick us out of this thing. So
Okay.
I love you and thank you so
Love you
much.
too.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.